I feel like a lot of people undermine the importance of mental illnesses, and this is exactly why they should never be taken lightly. Audie Sanchez was a 33-year-old mother of a 3-week-old baby. She had severe mental illnesses but was never given proper care for them. She started to hear voices in her head and became very paranoid. These voices were telling her that she needed to get rid of her baby because the devil was inside of him. Once she started hearing these voices telling her these things, she tried to admit herself into a psychiatric hospital, but they denied her, sent her home with some medication, and told her, hey, you're crazy, but you're gonna have to deal with it by yourself. Audie was aware that these thoughts weren't normal, so when she would feel like she might do something bad to her son, she would give him to her sister, but her sister would give him back to Audie after she thought Audie was good again. Although she knew Audie was having thoughts about harming her own son, she knew about Audie's severe mental illnesses as well. Their whole family did. There were several warning signs, but the baby was never taken out of her care, and this led to a devastating outcome. One night, Audie was staying with her mother and sister after she got in a fight with her baby father. Audie's sister had woken up to some loud screaming. It was Audie screaming after she had cut her son's head off and ate part of his brain. This is part 2 of why you should always take mental illnesses seriously. After Audie Sanchez had decapitated her 3-week-old son and ate part of his brain, she quoted, "I didn't mean to do it. He made me do it," referring to the devil. She first started hearing voices in her head when she took drugs for the very first time. Do not do drugs, kids. I'm telling you, you're gonna end up decapitating somebody. The saddest part about all of this is that this could have been prevented and that baby could have still been alive if people would have taken her mental illness seriously. Literally just 6 days before this happened, she had met with the counselor and told them that she had voices in her head telling her to harm her own baby. The counselor claimed this was her postpartum psychosis, which is when a mother responds negatively to her pregnancy, sometimes feeling like she needs to harm her child. The counselor did report that Audie needed mental evaluation, but the hospital didn't see the severity of the situation because the counselor failed to mention that Audie was hearing voices specifically telling her to harm her own child. Once they evaluated her, they concluded that she just heard voices and had hallucinations. In court, she was found not guilty by reason of insanity.
Storytime on how I found out my sister was actually my mom. My parents were much more older than me, and I always felt more distant from them than any of my siblings. I'm 17 years old. I grew with a big family. I have 5 siblings. My sister is 30, brother 29, another brother that's 29, and both of my sisters are 24 and 22. I always realized there was a big gap between me and the rest of them. I always figured that maybe I was an accident or unplanned. Being the youngest, I was spoiled all of the time. The way they treated me is how you would expect them to treat the youngest. My older sister Hannah always took care of me the best. I always saw her as a mother figure, never knowing that she was actually my real mom. She spent most of her time with me more than my other brothers and sisters. And she often took care of me when my mom wasn't there. And my parents were much more older than me, so I always felt like there was a distance between us. I ended up finding out Hannah was my mom after both of my parents passed away. If you want to know exactly how I found out, please come back for part 2. Part 2 on how I found out my sister was actually my mom. When my father passed away, it was probably the worst part of my life. I was 8 years old. I did not take it well at all. I cried for weeks and I went crazy. I threw fits at people. I know my siblings were all going through this just as bad as I was, but I made it all about me. I didn't consider them or what they had been going through the whole time. And recently, the same thing happened to my mom. It hit me just as hard, if not harder. She'd been sick for a long time and slowly getting worse. I wasn't ready for it at all. It was after this Hannah told me the truth. She sat me down, embraced me that what she was about to tell me, I would be shocked. She knew that we all were still recovering from my mother's passing, but a few weeks had passed and she felt like it was enough time to wait before actually coming out with the truth. Sorry, I can't do 3-minute long videos, but come back for part 3 if you want to know exactly how she explained that she was my mom. So, part 3 on how I found out my sister was actually my mom. She said she always wanted to tell me, and only now she could finally. When she was 13, as many stupid kids do, she had an unprotected ex with a boy, and she had got pregnant, and that child was me. At the time, her parents wanted to give her baby up for adoption, but she was unshakable and wanted to keep her child. She completely refused to give me away. They eventually agreed to keep me and would raise me in their household, but with their parents as the guardians, and I would grow up thinking that they were my real parents. Apparently, some of my older siblings also knew, but they never mentioned it. In fact, they're actually my aunts and uncles. My mother made Hannah swear that she would never tell me, and that she could only tell me only after some time after her death. She said she wanted to die as a mother, not a grandmother. Hannah said all my life she wanted to tell me, but swore not to. And she was glad that she was able to tell me the truth. But if you want to know how I reacted to the whole situation, part 4 coming up.
Storytime on how I found out my dad was transgender. Also, by the way, at the time I was 12. So I grew up an only child. I always wanted siblings, but my parents said that I was enough. And we would never really go see family like my grandparents. When I was a toddler, I used to see them. Well, at least that's what my parents told me. But I was never close with any of my family besides my one aunt. So one day I had a sleepover and I invited my friend and we played hide and seek. And I spent like 10 minutes looking for her until I finally found her in my basement holding a book. I was like, girl, I'm done playing with you. And she said she found an old picture book. When she told me, I was kind of excited because I haven't seen much of my family. As we went through the book, I saw a picture of my grandparents and 2 little girls. One of the girls in the picture I knew was my aunt because of the mole, but I didn't know who the other girl was. I flipped the picture around and it said familia, which by the way is family in Spanish. And I was like, so there's another aunt that I don't know about? But if you want to know how I confronted my dad about it, come back for part 2. This is part 2 on how I found out my dad was transgender. So, like I said, I found a picture of my dad's family, but he wasn't in it. That night, I went to my parents' bedroom and I saw my mom. I showed her the picture and she gasped. I asked, do I have another aunt and where's dad? She told me to sit down and that they wanted to tell her, but they wanted to wait at an age where they think I'd understand. So, a couple minutes later, my dad walked in and I asked, who's this girl? He sat next to me, held my shoulders and said that was him. And I started laughing at first because I was like, you're not a little girl. And he responded, at that time, that was me. And from there, he just told me everything. To when he finally transitioned, he talked about how unaccepting my grandparents were, which is partially why I really don't go see them. After everything my dad told me, I just sat there and cried for him. And my mom and dad both held me and told me everything was going to be fine. It's been 9 years and I have so much more respect for my dad, no matter what anyone thinks. Story time on how I found out I was adopted. So growing up, I felt so different from my family and the treatment was off as well. So my mom is white and my dad is black. And my brother and sisters are all biracial, and at the time I thought I was too. My older brother and sister were both light skinned, they had light eyes, they had curly or wavy hair, and same thing for my little sister. But she honestly looked like a white girl. I mean, if you straighten her hair, you would have thought that she was just white. And she looked more like my mom than anything. But me on the other hand, I turned out completely different. I forgot to mention, but my dad is light-skinned as well. I was dark-skinned, I had the regular dark brown eyes, and my hair was extremely kinky. And I recently found out that I have 4B hair. And I never understood how I turned out this way, and the rest of my family was light-skinned. I don't know, I just sometimes felt like I didn't belong in the family, and I wasn't pretty enough. And I definitely sensed something was off because my grandmas and aunts and uncles treated me way different. And I could tell I wasn't their favorite. Sorry I went on a rant, but if you want to know how I found out, come back for part 2. This is part 2 on how I found out I was adopted. So like I said earlier, I look completely different from my family. Mom's white, dad is black. Anyway, so the day I found out. So one time in class, we were doing Punnett squares. And at the time, I was in 8th grade. We did Punnett squares with our parents, height, hair, skin, eyes, everything. But my Punnett squares weren't adding up. Like, I didn't get the traits that I'm supposed to have. So that day after school, I showed my mom the Punnett squares. And my mom said that they weren't accurate and that the Punnett squares aren't a real thing. So I just went on with life again, just thinking that it was fake and that the Punnett square theory was wrong. Then a week later, I went back to school and showed my friends, and I told them, and they said that the Punnett squares were accurate. Then one of them laughed and said, you must be adopted or something. And when she said that, literally my whole world clicked. Sorry, but it's literally so much to the story. You're gonna have to come back for part 3 on how I even asked my parents how I was adopted or if I was adopted. So, sorry. This is part 3 on how I found out I was adopted. So one of my friends said that I must be adopted, and like for a whole month, it was just sitting on me to ask my parents if I was. I was kind of scared because I didn't want to believe that I was actually adopted, but everything was starting to add up from how I looked to how my family treated me. And it's always just been so weird. So one night we were having like a family movie night, and I started crying in the middle of the movie. My dad had paused the movie and asked what was wrong, and I finally asked what's been bothering me. Am I adopted? And my mom looked over to me, and from that look, I could just tell. A couple days later, my parents sat me down and talked about it, told me I was from Kenya, told me about my real mom, and just things that I wish I should have known sooner. Because most of my life, I was questioning my existence. But now I'm 43 years old. I was able to find 2 sisters I had. They were both older than me, and they were also adopted. But I never got to meet my real mom because she passed away before I could meet her. But I'm glad to have met the sisters that I have. Okay, so today I'll be facing the second biggest fear in my life. So today I'm getting 5 wisdom teeth pulled out. I know you're saying like 5, like usually people have 4 wisdom teeth, but for some reason I don't know what's going on in our genetics, but I got an extra one, so I got 5 to take out. And right now it's 2:01 and my appointment is at 2:30, so I gotta go in there in 30 minutes. But I'm about to go, so. I'm going. Okay.
After surgery, the nurses tried to fight me, but all I wanted was French fries. Y'all shouldn't do that to people.
Everything is written down in the sheet of paper.
That's not right.
Come on, let's go home.
I started singing Old MacDonald's. Like literally all I wanted was the rainbow French fries.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
This shouldn't be a thing.
Yes, I totally get it. Yes, ma'am.
I started getting scared because I thought my tongue was falling out.
She gonna change your goals, mama. Open mouth.
Please don't take my tongue. I won't be able to ever eat.